Okay, so day 22 these press-ups. I know I've only got 8 more of these to do, so I'm going to talk about something a little bit deeper today. But first, let's get some press-ups underway. Okay, so that was 40, big batch. So a bit more time to talk in this chunk. So I'm going to talk a bit about burnout, which in some ways is a bit of a controversial topic, because I think there are lots of different conceptions about, is burnout a real thing? Is it an excuse? And I don't think the latter. I've heard descriptions from close friends of what they describe to be an actual phenomenon of something called burnout, where they describe being emotionally numb, not being able to sleep, not being able to focus, and in this sort of zombie state, which, thank God, I don't think I've ever reached that extreme point, but I definitely, after hearing that on reflection, do think I've had some features of that. And for me, I think it comes in the form of perhaps irritability, sort of reduced actual output, inability to focus. So for me, it's much more of a distraction thing rather than a sort of hypo thing. I think for me, it's more of a hyper status. And the reason I'm talking about it is because I came across someone else on YouTube yesterday who was talking about, he's a young guy in his 20s who's talking about, sleeping 3-4 hours a night, working 20 hours a day, really just doing the grind, or just working on output. And it really triggered thoughts from how I think I approached life in my 20s. And it was really, so in the medical career, you have these exams which come every year, every couple of years, and I was always a real crammer. And so there were periods where it was months, 3-6 months or so, where I would, before an exam or before a deadline or before some sort of goal, where I would just really push myself to the mental limit of what's the least amount of sleep, what's the most amount of work I can do to really just smash this goal. And so it would be bouts of serious hard work, and then rest, recovery, play, hard work, play. And that got me to where I am, which is great. But the period when I was working was a dark one. It was not happy, it was survival. And the period afterwards was joyous, like it was like a nice break. It was brilliant to switch off. But I think that the thing that's changed in the last few years is I've realized that life is not just, my goal is not just a specific event coming up in 6 months' time. There's a rolling, continuous nature to work, impact, and doing things that you can't just keep cramming, because as soon as you finish, there's something else on your plate, right? You're never just tackling one fire. There are like 4 or 5 different things going on at once. And if you cram and focus on one, you get distracted from all 4. If you focus hard to complete one, and I'd argue that things no longer just get completed, it's more of a journey, and you just overcome obstacles, then you neglect everything else, and then you have to just keep doing that over and over again. And so I think there's this transition in my own mind away from this capability of, yes, I can work for an extra 6 hours today and then go to sleep at 2 a.m. and then set my alarm clock and wake up at 6, but that's sustainable maybe for 3 days. And I'd argue that, I've spoken about sleep and issues like that before, but actually the quality of what you do is less. And even taking a step back, I think a big thing that's changed in my life is more than just sort of academic output. You have responsibilities, family, friends, other duties and things that you need to do, and you just can't afford to neglect those for the sake of one thing. And you think you might be able to, or you think it'll all work out in the long run, or it's the best thing for benefit in the long term, but actually short-term goals rarely ever, for me, translate into benefit long-term if it means neglecting important other things in life. Okay, 36. So we're up to 76, which is great. We might get this done in 3 sets. And one other consideration, which has been really recent for me, is you can never predict the unexpected, by nature of it. And so if you are pushing yourself with 0 reserve, so if you're working 16 hours a day, not looking after yourself, and you're really cramming so that you need every last second of preparation before assessment, exam, or goal, then you are leaving no wiggle room for the unexpected. And the burden of unexpected challenges, family member falling ill, you falling ill, an injury, a new work responsibility coming onto your plate, a new demand, your car, your house needing work, maintenance. If you have no slack in the system, then there is nothing for you to expand into. And so one thing I found is that you need to give that wiggle room for you to be able to grow and develop to manage those unexpected things just without breaking stride. Because if it comes to the point where you either can't react to those, then those very small manageable tasks will blow up into something much more significant with longer term impact. For example, an injury, a family injury, a relationship, a maintenance job. It will grow up into a bigger problem, and the cost of that is sometimes having that wiggle room which doesn't get utilized. And so that means you need to prepare or provide enough buffer to potentially manage an unexpected task, but there is a possibility that nothing will ever come in, and you've got to be able to handle the sort of guilt of wasted time without feeling guilty about it. Because actually in the long run, what I found is being able to absorb those things without getting deviated off course is incredibly important. And this goes back to that again, that original message of consistency and really changing your perspective from short-term milestones to sort of long-term goals. And if your long-term goal is just consistent output, consistent impact over the long term, that will mean, for me, I think, reduced short-term outputs for greater long-term outputs. This all makes sense in my head, or is starting to, and part of the reason I'm talking about it today is to help me understand this. So it is something that I'm going to try and distill into a clearer methodology, or sorry, wrong word, a clearer mindset. But I think moving away from the short-term high-intensity behaviors that lead to burnout, which I think if I'd carried on the way I was doing, I would probably end up there, or worse, or have an accident or have a problem, which again, anyone who's able to look back would recognize that it's not something worthwhile. And if you don't have one of those and you are able to do high bursts of short-term output and not have any problems, then that's luck rather than skill. Anyway, that's my thought for today, and it's about making the sacrifices you need to avoid sort of extreme car crash moments in life and extreme burnout moments. So let's see how this sort of crystallizes over the future. Great, my first 3-setter. See you tomorrow.